We are on the precipice of something that's never happened.
I want a tryout, man.
We got the Alaska lookalike contest going on outside. Yeah, why are you in a parka?
Draw more attention to the fact that there was a word that had to be dropped.
I think you think it's getting worse because your own personal skills are getting better.
Because honestly, you think some freak fat guy drinking clown juice can't make an intelligent decision.
The Sport Buffet. Sport Buffet. Hot sports talks on the menu, and you're the guest. If you'd like to expand the selection or have a comment, send us an email at podcast@sportbuffet.com. That's podcast@sportbuffet.com. Yeah. And now we open the buffet. Here's Matt West.
Welcome into the Sport Buffet. We are excited to get back at it. It's been a long hiatus.
Well, yes. This is the Sport Buffet. Thank you so kindly for joining us. We are here today, and hopefully both of our viewers appreciate the fact that they're not looking at us. Is that correct? They're looking at a screen that just has a logo of some sort?
Yes, they are looking at our new station that we're on, the Aristocrat Sportsnet. And we're excited to be a part of the Aristocrat Sportsnet and hoping for good things, looking for good things out of this new up-and-coming station. Happy to be aboard.
Yeah, I'll let you know in a week how happy we are about being a part of it. But one of the things, and you know, we could probably spend hours talking about this, but we probably have spent, 20 man-hours trying to put together this very show. Would you say 20 man-hours is a good estimate?
I would say 20 man-hours is good.
Yeah, just so you know, just to bring to you the show that is before you today, there have been many steps, and Iceman has proven to be a man capable of many electronic greatness, I would say. And, you know, so we got to give some props to you there, Ice. But this is a show where it's middle of February, almost, about a third of the way through February. We're looking into the Ides of February. And the biggest event of February has already happened, and that would be the Super Bowl. So as a lifelong Patriots fan, Ice, I know you had to be happy about that Super Bowl.
I was excited. I was very excited. It was another crazy game. High, very, very low, because I'll tell you what, when Curse made that ridiculous acrobatic catch, I thought, here we go again.
Yeah. Well, and as a Patriot fan, I'm sure it's different. But I would say, had the Seahawks won this game, this would be unlike perhaps the Giants game, where you felt like the Patriots had outplayed them. And, you know, again, if you're a Patriot fan, maybe you still feel that way. I don't know. I felt like this game was well played on both sides. But to me, it shows us – to me, it's Exhibit A as to why you can't judge football players purely on titles. It's a single elimination tournament. There's some things. And there are maybe 2 or 3 plays that completely turn around that game, and the legacy of both Tom Brady and Russell Wilson, not to mention Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, all hinge on those plays. For example, if Beast Mode runs the ball in and they end up getting a touchdown and winning that game, a lot of people think a lot less of Tom Brady, and he had nothing to do with that.
Right.
Similarly,
it's all the legacy, the talk, and like you said, as much as we like to rate individual positions in what would be considered the ultimate team sport, you really can't do something like that. However, it's not going to stop us from continuing to, Brady was going to be elevated or deflated, with no pun intended, based on this Super Bowl.
Yeah, and we probably should talk about that a little bit. But yeah, and I don't think it's not completely fair. I mean, like it's not like basketball where you can say, look, if you lost, there are a number of things you could have done during the game differently. There's nothing that Brady did or could have done that changed that final non-touchdown or what could have been a touchdown drive for the Seahawks.
Right. The only thing you could say is that if we let them score, being the Patriots, you let them score, then Brady has 20 some odd seconds to, attempt another comeback victory, or at least have a shot at a field goal to send the game into OT.
Now Brady comes back. Oh no, yeah, obviously if he does that, then that's a different story. But I mean, I think most people are assuming if Beast Mode runs it in with 20 seconds to go, he's not going to get that. And maybe he could have. I mean, maybe that's a bad assumption. Also the fact that they met a Seahawks team that had a lot of injuries. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm saying, does a Seahawks defense that's as healthy as it was last year in the Super Bowl or as it was this year at Week 15, does that make a difference? And maybe it does. And I don't know to what extent. And let's go the other way. The fact that if Gronkowski is present for the playoffs last year at 100%, Tom Brady, I think I put it this way. Tom Brady is 9 points away from being 6-0 in Super Bowls. And he's 17 points away from being 0-6.
Okay.
And we look at that so different. And yet much of that is not on him. He's played great in most of the Super Bowl. His career arc is weird because he was on a very good team. But that first Super Bowl, and probably even the second one, he was the game manager, and I'm doing air quotes for those of you who can't see it. And yet he has now grown into a great quarterback. So should he get equal credit for the first Super Bowl where he really didn't do that much? And, not to overplay this, and I know it's going to be discounted by you, but I personally, I think when they beat the greatest show on turf, when they beat the Rams, I think at least a portion of that is because they knew the plays. Because when the Rams abandoned, and I'm okay with that. Don't misunderstand me. It's not sour grapes. I'm not upset about it. But I just think if you look at the way that game played out, when every play that was scripted, the Patriots stopped. Every play that was run that was not scripted, the Patriots did not stop. I mean, it was a drastic difference. And then you could say, well, why didn't Dick Neal and Mike Martz or whoever was calling plays or whatever, why didn't they change that? And that's on them. So I have no problem. Hey, the Patriots won the Super Bowl. That's the way it is. But I don't think Brady had a lot. He was there. He played well enough to win. But what did he throw for 150 yards in that first Super Bowl win?
Roughly.
Whereas this Super Bowl, they put a lot on his shoulders. He had to throw the ball a lot, and he did well. He played really a Peyton Manning-like game. He didn't throw many deep balls. The only deep ball he threw was when Gronkowski had that complete mismatch. He did the dink and dunk stuff, and they ripped him apart all day. And so he's a great player. I know you have him as the best ever. I have him in the top 3 or 4. I tend to give more credit to Bill Belichick you tend to think Belichick's a defensive stalwart and not as prominent offensively, and that may be true. But I just think if you look at common thread of all the great offenses is Bill Belichick. Even though I know you want to discount the Matt Castle year, he was able to do something with even that quarterback, and I don't think you can give that credit to like Josh McDaniel or Charlie Weiss, because these are guys who tried to have. They had Brady Quinn and Tim Tebow, and those are the people they counted on.
Well,
so.
let's look at it this way. I mean, in a situation where you have 2008 versus 2007, where we all know that Randy Moss and Wes Welker and a formidable defense still consisting of Teddy Bruschi, Richard Seymour, etc. Those guys translated over to 2008. Tom Brady gets hurt the first quarter of the season against the Chiefs. Matt Castle steps in, and I understand you could say, look, it's a system. Look what Matt Castle did. However, you still got these guys on the other side: Randy Moss, Wes Welker, Richard Seymour, Teddy Bruschi, Mike Vrabel. You still got some of some great players. Take 2009; those players are gone. Seymour's in Oakland. Bruschi and Vrabel have moved on. I believe Bruschi retired and Vrabel went to Kansas City. Randy Moss, for whatever reason, those 2 years did a number on him because he was not the same player in 09 and then eventually in 10 when he got cut. Wes Welker, yes, he still was a great receiver, but I believe that's a product of Tom Brady, who made Wes Welker. Look, Wes Welker's moved on, and he's not the same receiver he was with Peyton Manning now. So,
well, he was the first couple of years, but
he's only been there 2 years.
I don't. No, he's been there. He's been there since the last Super Bowl. He was very good the first couple of years. This year was the first year you really saw him not do that well, and I think that's more of a product that they got Emmanuel Sanders, who's better. But I will say this, and this is what I find fascinating. You talk about Wes Welker. You have Wes Welker, who's been in Denver now for 3 years.
2 years.
And he will tell you that he still hears Bill Belichick when he's talking to the press. He still feels pressured to not say things. And then you have this guy, Gronkowski, who seems to be able to say whatever he wants.
Yeah, it could be, in a situation where I think that Belichick has loosened the reins a little bit. I don't think that Gronkowski's saying anything inappropriate in terms of defamation to the team, and I think that Wes, at times, especially after the Super Bowl where he dropped the pass that should have probably completed a fourth Super Bowl for Brady and the Patriots, I think that when you start to say things that try to attack the team, for lack of a better word, I think that's when your microphone has been shut down by Bill Belichick. Whereas Gronkowski is very happy-go-lucky, doesn't really have too much going on inside of his noodle. So I think that, until Gronk does something that's absolutely detrimental to the team, I think that the filter, there's no reason to have a filter on Gronk.
Yeah, I think it has more to do with that Gronk is a generational player. He's perhaps the best tight end to ever play the game.
Well, I think perhaps Wes Welker might be the best slot receiver to ever play the game. I
think Wes Welker benefited from Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. I mean, look at what Wes Welker did in Miami. It was nothing. I mean, I'm a Dolphin fan, so I mean, but he was not a great player in Miami.
No.
He goes to New England. He's all of a sudden great. I think that has more to do with Brady and Belichick than it does Wes Welker. And I don't think Wes Welker is. I think Wes Welker is easily replaceable. I don't feel
I
like
think it's been evidenced by Julian Edelman that Wes Welker is replaceable.
Yeah, you got Julian Edelman, and you've got even Danny Amendola, and I don't think any Patriot fan is sitting here saying, "Oh my goodness, we lost Wes Welker." Maybe they were right after it happened, but as it happened, I think that they're. I think they've said, yeah, that's not that big of a loss.
Look, I talked to a lot of Patriots fans right when Wes Welker left, when he signed the deal, and there was all that discrepancy over a couple $1 million. And once we saw what Edelman could do, I didn't feel like we were going to miss Wes Welker because I liked the signing of Amendola. Now, has he lived up to the contract that they put him through? No, but that contract has a lot of different loopholes that the Patriots are actually probably saving money. Anyways, I think with the combination of Gronk Julian Edelman and Amendola. And now, if we could find a way to get a guy to replace Aaron Hernandez, which I thought was going to be Tim Wright this year, this offense could be set up for Brady wants to play 5 more years and stay healthy. Oh man, we could be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly something. Now, here's the question. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. First, how many games do you think the Patriots deflated balls?
Just in general?
Yeah, I mean, like in the last year, like this year. Let's just take this year of games. Yeah, do you think they deflated at 0? It was just bad luck against the Colts. Do you think there was some deflation going on against the Colts and that's it, or do you think it happened in a majority, if not all, the games?
Well,
or somewhere in between.
I mean, I think I'm the wrong person to be asking this question because, to be honest with you, I mean, with the basis of the actual PSI that the balls were, I mean, the newest information that they were just a tick below the legal pressure, I don't believe that they do. I don't believe that they have been deflating balls. And you can look at the whole fumble rate from, the last 10 years. And to me, that doesn't mean a lot. I mean, we've had a lot of guys that couldn't hold on to the ball. Randy Moss fumbled a lot. Stephen Ridley fumbled a lot. I just think it's a situation where you got guys that are capable of holding the ball because look at Ridley. When he fumbled, that was the last carry of the game for him. It's a situation where I think that you can use stats to prove any point you want. And I mean, I think that with the new evidence or information in this witch hunt, I think that it's I don't believe that the Patriots were regularly deflating footballs.
But do you think they did it at all? No,
I don't. And you can take that as bias. I just I like to be objective because we're on the radio and we've done radio in the past. I like to maintain an objective opinion. I don't believe that they deflated balls. I really don't believe that. Well, if there's anything,
how about this?
Go ahead.
Do you think they maybe not deflated? Do you think they purposefully inflated them a little bit too little and knew that they would not be checked? Do you think that is possible?
Well, I think that they are checked. I think the problem is I think it's standard. We've looked at many different theories and videos. I think that the atmospheric pressure did have an effect, and I think that being that Bill Belichick and maybe Brady, maybe have been in on this, but knowing that when a deflated football is advantageous to you, holding the ball at the minimum PSI, knowing that the atmospheric pressure is going to cause it to step below that PSI. I don't find that cheating. I find that to actually be a advantageous, being that you're smarter, you're outsmarting the opponent. I mean, call me crazy. Maybe that sounds like a bogus defense for them. But you know what? If I'm sitting here saying, okay, if I take it to the minimum 12.5 PSI, knowing that when the ball goes outside, it's going to be underneath that and giving me a little bit of an advantage in holding on to the football and throwing the football, why am I not going to do that? Because I'm not cheating. I'm just taking advantage of the atmosphere or the system that basically we live in.
Well, saying this as a guy who used to pump balls up for a living. Well, not for a living. I did it for free, but it was my job to
You were
pump
alive
up balls.
when you did it. Let's just put it that. That's your living.
Yeah. What I had to do was I had to pump up balls. I had to measure them and do all that. I think this atmospheric pressure stuff is nonsense. And I think that for a variety of reasons. Having said that, I do agree with you if the refs aren't going to check it. And I would say this, even if they knew, hey, but what? Yeah, maybe. But what I'm saying is, I think that if the penalty is, I don't necessarily think they deflated balls. I'm not sure. But I do think that they had balls that were purposely too small. Having said that,
never want to tell a man that.
I kind of agree with you that you're just taking advantage of the system. I think they purposefully made them a little bit smaller. It may have had an impact on the fumble rate. It may not. I think that the impact it had was minimal, if at all. And to me, the only reason I think they did it more than the Colts game is because the Colts are a team that they routinely pound. And if they're routinely beating them big, if you're going to do it in that game, why wouldn't they do it in the Baltimore game, a team they routinely struggle with? Why wouldn't they do it in that they have a mixed history with? Why wouldn't they do it in the game against Green Bay where Green Bay was the favorite? Why wouldn't they do it in these other games? And that's where I come to the conclusion of whatever they did, and I think they did something. And maybe they didn't deflate it. Maybe they just purposefully had him too little, whatever. I think they did it regularly, and I think, the prescribed fine is $25,000. Fine them $25,000. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I think there's broader issues, like, for example, that the NFL lets you bring your own balls. I coached a third grade football team, and we brought our own footballs to the game, and we purposefully kept them softer. Why? Because our quarterback was in third grade, had small hands, and had trouble gripping the ball. When we deflated it a little bit, he didn't have trouble. Our guys could catch it easier when it was a little deflated. We did this, and the coach of the other team would say, "Well, how come you can play with that?" I said, "You can deflate your ball." I mean, I had no problem with it. My question is, once you get to high school football, the state provides the balls. Why do we get to the NFL and we allow it to go back to the third grade system where teams are preparing their own balls? I mean, of course. You okay?
Yeah, I am. There's some construction going on outside of my office. So.
Wow, that was man, that's crazy. Anyway, I just feel like the NFL, as big and as rich of an organization as it is, should take care of the balls themselves and not leave it to the individual teams.
Okay, I mean, I can see in that sense, and that might be something that's corrected here in the off season. But let me ask you this,
sure.
And I've heard this comparison, and I think it's a pretty good one, because I really don't know anybody who can give me an answer that would my thirst for this query. Take boxing or UFC. Basically, the weigh-ins are 24 hours before the fight's scheduled to begin, correct?
Right.
Well, weigh-in, fighter needs to weigh between 155 and 160 to qualify for weight. Boom, he makes it, no problem. Now, why in that 24 hours is he allowed to load up on anything and gain as much weight as he can within 24 hours before a fight? Why is that not illegal?
I mean,
if in the situation, if you're saying that the
illegal.
Patriots, after the fact, purposely deflated a football, what makes that any less? I mean, I understand it's an error by the NFL. If you're going to say anything, basically 2 hours and 15 minutes or whatever it is before the game, you're gonna basically test the football when anything can happen in 2 hours and 15 minutes. If you do it 10 minutes before a game or 15 minutes before a game, there's a lot less likely for people or teams to start doctoring footballs.
Or you just bring the official game balls. I mean, did you play high school? Did you play high school basketball?
I did not play high school basketball.
I played high school basketball. I know that's hard to believe. We would go, and both teams would have like 10 balls, and they would warm up with these balls, and the ref would have one ball, and he'd say, "Hey, this is the game ball," and both teams would feel it and be like, "Okay, that's the game ball." They would hold it above their head. They would drop it. They would bounce it. If it bounced up and hit the elbow, it was acceptable for game ball use. Okay. If you play high school football, did you play high school football?
I did.
Okay. Who brought the balls to the game when you played high school football?
I believe we brought probably in the upwards of 15 to 20 balls, and I'm sure that same number was provided by the other team as well. Because I know we played.
Okay, so
I know about 5 or 6 were in circulation most often. But I mean, that's something I really didn't pay too much attention to.
Yeah, when I played high school football, the way it worked is both teams brought like as many balls as they want, and they said, "Hey, here are the 3 game balls." And both teams brought 3 games balls, and that was 6 balls. And they rotated those 6 balls throughout the game, 3 from each team. And you didn't necessarily get a ball you brought; you got a ball someone else may have brought. And we didn't measure PSI or anything, but you're feeling them. I feel like if you can do that in high school football, why do you get to the NFL and allow a Tom Brady and this is where I fight Bill Belichick saying he doesn't know anything.
They allow these quarterbacks to basically create the football to their liking throughout the course of the week and throughout the course of the season. So basically, these guys are scrubbing the balls, loosening the laces a little bit, scraping down the laces, doing anything possible that makes the quarterback happy. Now,
and this is
in the realm of the rules. The rule is based 2 PSIs. And my question is you have quarterbacks that aren't Tom Brady, Brad Johnson, Aaron are coming out and saying, look, this PSI range that is being offered is not good for anybody. I mean, Rodgers likes it above it. Brad Johnson liked it below. You're saying Tom Brady likes it below. I mean, I really think that, honestly, it's a situation to where I think the PSI spectrum is just too narrow. I mean, if you want to sit here and have quote-unquote trust with the teams, you got to broaden the horizons. Let Rodgers play with an overinflated ball. Let Brady play with something a little less deflated. If Rodgers thinks that his overinflated ball actually helps the team, when you see guys like Lacy and Nelson coughing up the ball more regularly than a lot of other receivers and running backs, I think that that's a detriment to them. If Brady and the Patriots think that they want to have something a little more deflated so that the running backs can hold on to it, whether it's Blunt or Ridley. I mean, if you're talking about having deflated balls, clearly Ridley is not a very good running back because he couldn't hold on to these deflated balls. He had so
no, I get that.
So I mean, I guess the other thing I would say is to let them kind of doctor up the balls they want throughout the course of the week. But what do? You turn them in on Saturday, and then the NFL holds them until the day of your game, or 10 minutes.
Yeah, I would say you don't let them doctor it up. You have official game balls that are official game balls. But I will say this, and I don't want to spend much more time on this because I think it's overplayed anyway. But here's the thing: Tom Brady says, I like it better at 12.5 than 13.5. It's better that way.
Okay.
And then he says, but I can't tell the difference between 11.5 and 12.5. Somewhere here, there's a disconnect. Somewhere that doesn't make sense. So if Bill Belichick says, hey, look, I didn't know anything about it, totally believe him. Tom Brady says, I didn't know, I don't believe that.
Well, look at this situation. If you were holding a football between these different PSIs, I mean, I think maybe somebody holds a football 10,000 times more than I do, may have a little bit more of a notion, but I think you're talking about very minuscule deflation.
But I think if he says it's a difference between 12.5 and 13.5, which is what he says. He says, I don't like it at 13, I only like it at 12, and that's what it has. Then, and he can notice the difference between 13.5 and 12.5, he has to be able then to notice the difference between 12.5 and 11.5. And again,
maybe he's notified.
I don't care.
Maybe he's notified, hey, this is 12 and this is 13. Okay, I can tell the difference, but maybe he hasn't been notified that, okay, this is 11 and this is 12. Maybe he doesn't notice the difference. I mean, like you said, I don't think that, the court of court of public opinion, they're guilty. It doesn't matter what the NFL comes out with.
And this is the guy that you say is the best thing. You're saying, oh, he can't tell the difference between. He knew. I mean, like, and I don't have a problem with him knowing. He knew. Like, I don't have a problem. Stick him on his gloves. Okay, you got caught. So big deal.
He didn't get caught. 20 years later, he admits himself.
Well, yeah, Jerry Rice didn't get caught, but Tom Brady got caught. Okay, so you get caught. Now you got to play with it within the rules. No big deal. I mean, it's not. To me, this is such a. I feel like Tom Brady would have been better off just saying, "Hey, look, we inflated to where it is. Maybe it wasn't the right thing." But I think he came off as disingenuous in every interview I saw him in, whereas Bill Belichick did not. Now, maybe that just means Bill Belichick's a better liar, but I felt like Tom Brady at least knew that it wasn't within the scope of 12.5 to 13.5. Maybe, and maybe he had something to do with it, but he certainly didn't say anything.
Well, yeah, look at it this way. Let me ask you this. Say that there was this rogue ball boy, which everybody had that theory for a little bit. Maybe there was this rogue ball boy who knows, maybe he heard Brady talking in passing, hey, I like him a little bit more deflated because they throw better, we can hold on to him better, and the guy took it upon himself. And you know what? During the middle of the game, Brady feels the football, which, I mean, when you're running plays, you're not like, this one feels a little more deflated. But let's just say he was holding a football at some point, and he says, look, this one actually feels like it might be under the PSI. Oh, well, it's approved. Not my problem. You're not going to really sit there and go, well, excuse me, ref, I don't think this ball's appropriate at that point.
No. And I get that. I'm just saying that when it comes out later, hey, these balls were underinflated, and for him to say, I had no idea till Monday morning, well, he had to know something because they stopped the game to change out the balls. I mean, like, I just feel like he would have been better. And maybe this is just
nobody was notified on the field. A lot of the people up in the press box were notified, and the officials, the NFL officials, were notified. But I mean, that stoppage in play right after the second half was very minuscule. You really, if you're on the field focusing on the game, I can see where they weren't really even paying attention to why this ball was taken out of play. because after the interception in the first half, you know, DeQuell Jackson was like, hey, this is, you know, a little bit weird. Now he's saying that he didn't say anything. But, you know, so I can see where maybe, you know, you sleep the next day, you're excited, you're celebrating, you're going to the Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. Next day comes out, Deflategate, this and that, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, maybe I am throwing my bias in here a little bit, but I just
I don't think there's any way Tom Brady didn't know.
And you know what? I don't, and I'm not saying that that's not 100% accurate, but I'm also saying that I think there's this moral gray area where it doesn't matter what he knew or didn't know. We're talking about.
I'm okay with that too.
I mean, we're talking about 3 titles that they got signals when it was legal. I mean, videotaping was legal, and that's a whole. We can talk about the 3 titles, but I'll tell you what, they got 4 titles, and to any Patriots fan, they're not tainted. So you could talk until you're blue in the face if you're a fan of another team, but you're not going. It's basically the situation where if you're a Patriots fan, you don't think anything. Your titles are your titles. I don't find any asterisks on them. And if you're a fan of a different team, especially one that has less Super Bowls than the Patriots, then you want to sit here and have your paint your asterisk party. Then fine, go ahead. I mean, you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings in New England.
Well, here's where I would come off on this is this is what makes, to me, professional football better than college football, because it's kind of like saying, well, we're going to take 100 wins away from Joe Paterno. Oh, we're going to give them back. Oh, we're going to take these away. Don't take wins away. I mean, stupid. It insults my memory. I watched Tom Brady win those games. I watched the Patriots win. I am not a Patriots fan. I know you are. I'm to some degree anti-Patriots. Growing up as a Dolphin fan and them always getting beat up by the Patriots, I don't like the Patriots. But I can say this, and I think this is, look, if they did, even if they completely cheated, even if it was like totally they were completely outside of the rules, what they did was just totally unacceptable, but they won them. And if you want to take stuff away in the future, go ahead. I don't think there's any team that would not say, okay, look, we're going to lose a draft pick. We're going to win a Super Bowl, but lose a draft pick and say, yeah, I'm not going to take that. I think every team in the NFL would take that. And if you're any team you're a fan of, you would take that. Like if you told me, look, the Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl next year, but they're going to lose their first-round draft pick because of it, take it. That's fine.
Sure. And it's the same thing with USC and Reggie Bush. You know, Reggie Bush, the violations that he committed were not on the field. I mean, yeah, some housings and some cars, blah, blah, blah. But that didn't take away from the talent that was Reggie Bush in college football. And, you know.
Yeah, and it's so ridiculous. Now Reggie Bush didn't win the Heisman. I saw him. I mean, come on.
I saw he was one of the greatest running backs of the 2000s. You know, how do you take that away?
That's so ridiculous. Yeah, and that's, to me, that is the one thing. Like, if you're going to say they're college, I think that's the one thing that even the most ardent supporter of college football would have to confess. Look, pro football is better in that it doesn't insult my memory. It doesn't try to say, oh, this didn't happen. Oh, they vacated 180 wins, but we'll give them back when the family complains. I mean, like, come on. That's just insane.
Sure.
The Patriots won. If you want to take stuff away in the future, okay, that's fine. They've won their Super Bowls. You know, that is what it is.
Well, the problem with college football is they also punish people who had no involvement, a la Penn State. You're punishing the players and the coaches, the Bill O'Briens and the James Franklins. Obviously, they've been rescinded, but you're punishing the people that had no bearing on it. You want to impose a fine like the $50 million one they did? Fine. Levy any suspensions you want against the former regime. But you're telling things that happened 10 years ago. You are now punished from bowl qualifications. You know, you can go to other schools and now try to compete when you've probably been entrenched in your starting job here at Penn State. You know, there's just how do you punish kids, or how do you punish people who are not part of that regime? I just don't understand it.
Well, I mean, Penn State's a bad example, because if it were me, if I were making that decision, I would have said, hey, look, we're doing away, we're taking the program away entirely. That's what I would have done. I felt it was an institutional issue. There were enough people and enough power that knew, and then you tell the kids they got to go play elsewhere because Penn State can't have a football team for 2 years or whatever.
The thing is, I'm actually more willing to accept a death penalty for that incident than telling people that they have to stay and honor their scholarships or risk going to try to compete for another starting job. But if you stay here, you have no qualifications for national championships or bowls. So, I mean, I would much rather them have imposed a death penalty, even if it was temporary. to that organization, to that school.
But I think in that case you're punishing the school, and that
sure, that's their money maker.
But Jerry Sandusky, you hate to speak ill of the dead, but Joe Paterno did not do what he should have done. The higher ups in the university did not do what they should have done. To me, penalizing the school is an acceptable penalty. I do agree with you, though, that people who never had anything to do with it get punished, and that's the problem. And so I think in general, and I think in 10 years the NCAA is going to become either completely different or obsolete. There's going to be some other entity that runs sporting events for college because their rules are – look, I have no doubt that college football players get paid illegally. I have no doubt that college football players are doing things. But if you're a college football player, you can't even go get a job washing cars at the local car wash if it exceeds so many hours and you get paid this amount. So, and people like to make fun of Chris Webber because he said, I needed pizza money, and the volume of money they gave him was more than pizza money. But the truth is that he probably did need pizza money. He probably did. Now, he didn't need the volume of money they gave him for pizzas. He didn't need $65,000 to buy pizza, but he probably did need pizza money because how's he going to get money? His family didn't have it. And so now what you're saying is the NCAA has rules that say, Johnny Manziel, you grew up in a wealthy family. You can go do whatever you want. Someone else, let's say Jameis Winston, you grew up in a poor family. You have no ability to go get a job. You have no ability to go do this or go do that. Of course there's going to be hardship. I'm not saying we need to pay the players, but you ought to at least enable them to get jobs. You ought to at least allow things to happen. I was in college. I had a job. I don't know why student athletes can't also get jobs. And that's because, and I'm not saying every student athlete needs a job either, but I'm saying when I was in college, in order to get, to buy pizza when I wanted it, to have the fun that college kids may want to go have, in order to do that, I had to have a job. I got a job. I worked the job. And when I did, I had the money. I didn't have gross amounts of money, but I had enough money to do the things I wanted to do while in college. And that liberty is not afforded to football players or basketball players or any kind of good athlete. And I just think that's wrong. And I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater and say, we are against people getting $1,000 an hour to go sit in an office and, stare at a painting and I know stuff like that happened. And so I understand why the rule was made, but it's just once the rule was made, and this is where I think Michael Wilbon has just he likes to call the NCAA Barney Fife. And if you've seen the Andy Griffith Show and Barney Fife, Barney Fife is always trying to enforce the rule, but he does so with kind of crazy awkwardness. There's a speed limit of 35, and he's pulling over. Everyone is going between 36 and 38 miles an hour. And we understand that some of that is just it's silly. And I think that's where the NCAA is. They make their rules so much that they get silly.
I can understand. I can see what you're saying with that.
So, all right. Well, now that I've completely convinced you, we've talked about football all this time. We've got about 20. I want to bring up a little bit the NBA, the NBA season, and the Cavaliers with their thing. First of all, it seems like it's working. I don't know if you have been following any of the stories about Kevin Love. Is he working? Is he not working? Should they have traded Andrew Wiggins for him? And all of this. Have you been following any of that, or is that something you're just like, hey, LeBron left Miami, I no longer care?
I mean, when LeBron was in Miami, I didn't care. My affinity, or lack thereof for professional basketball. But I do follow, and I know the tweet that came out with LeBron about fitting in and not fitting out, and I understand. I still keep up with the day-to-day SportsCenter stories, and so I'm with you. I know what you're saying.
Well, let me say this: you got Kevin Love, and people are like, "Oh, this trade hasn't worked out. They shouldn't have traded Andrew Wiggins." Look at Andrew Wiggins' numbers. Isn't that what got them Kevin Love in the first place? Looking at Kevin Love's numbers, looking at Kevin Love's Love's number made them say, man, we should get Kevin Love. Kevin Love had better numbers on Minnesota last year than Andrew Wiggins has this year. So you can't just say, well, Andrew Wiggins' numbers are better than Kevin Love's and say, oh, the trade's not working out. No. Put Kevin Love back in the situation in Minnesota, he'll still score 26 and get 14 rebounds a game. I mean, that's not proving that Andrew Wiggins is better than Kevin Love. And again, I'm not saying he's not better, but that doesn't prove anything. I tell you one thing I have seen from LeBron James is he's tweaking people. Like in Miami, he kind of fit in and this, but he's taken a leadership role in this team that's different than any leadership role he had previously. He started by like giving Kyrie Irving a hard time and saying, look, you got to pass the ball. It's unacceptable that you have this few assists. Basically playing the point position much of the time, tweaking Kyrie Irving. Now he's moving on and tweaking Kevin Love, and he's got Kyrie Irving playing at a great high level. Now he's tweaking Kevin Love. I see LeBron this year doing things to get more out of the team than they were expecting. And I'm really, honestly, I'm giving him some props for that.
Okay.
I think
I can see that.
I mean, the fact that he tweaked Kevin Love a little bit, people are like, oh no, what's Kevin going to do? Well, look, Kevin Love's scoring numbers haven't been up, but if you look since LeBron James came back and they put together this starting unit of 5, Kevin Love's averaging like 12 and a half, 13 rebounds a game. That's the Kevin Love he needs. Kevin Love doesn't have to score 30 every game like he did in Minnesota. They won games with him scoring 5 points. Kevin Love's rebounding. And that's where I think, and people want to compare him to Chris Bosh, and there is some similarity to that adjustment factor. But Chris Bosh was never the rebounder that Kevin Love was. Chris Bosh was as good of a scorer as Kevin Love is, and he's reestablished himself as a scorer this year. He's averaging, 24, 25 points. He's getting like 7 rebounds a game. Kevin Love is rebounding well with LeBron. And if he can continue to bring that, whether or not he scores 25 points a game, they're a very good team. And they started this run, and I think they figured it out.
Well,
and I think
the reason they need Kevin Love's rebounding a lot more now is because of Varejão's injury. Varejão's not coming back. Their big men are lacking in the middle, whereas we had Birdman, Odin, to an extent of all those big guys where Bosh could spread and become a point forward where he was able to fire the 3 and he didn't really need to produce, 14, 15 rebounds a game.
Miami was the worst rebounding team in the league 2 years in a row. Miami, that was their shortcoming, is they got outshot. The other team would get 10 more shots a game because they got more rebounds. That doesn't happen with Cleveland. You got Mozgov, and when Kevin Love rebounds, Kevin Love is a great rebounder. He's one of the best in the NBA. And yes, if you pull him away from the basket, he's not going to get as many offensive rebounds. But you play him with LeBron, I think they're starting to figure it out. I mean, and the wins suggest that too. So I'm not onto anything new. But I think this whole irritant role that LeBron is playing to Kevin Love, I think it's strategic and I think it's working. And I think it's similar to what he did to Kyrie. It's done differently, but when he tweaked Kyrie Irving earlier this year and was talking about how we need to pass and where the ball's stalling and whatever, and now Kyrie Irving's never going to be a 20-assist-a-game guy, but he's now got 5 assists a game, bring the ball up more. LeBron's a great passer. I think they're starting to figure it out, and I think that's bad news for the rest of the Eastern Conference, which if Adam Silver has his way, they'll do away with conferences. I'm not sure if you think that's a good thing or not, but the conference alignments may go away.
I will tell you, getting on the point of Adam Silver's conference realignment or de-alignment, as you would say, I'm on the fence about it. Actually, to be honest with you, as a sports fan, I think it's great. I think you get the 16 most competitive teams, regardless of what city they're located in and what division and conference, etc. I think it's a great move for the NBA, and I think they should have done it 5 years ago. But I will tell you this, from a betting standpoint, I do like the fact that we have lackluster teams in the bottom of the East, because I actually can turn a little bit of a profit when playoff time comes. So having lackluster teams in the East actually is beneficial to my wallet. However, I will say that for the fans of that sport, I believe the 16 best teams should make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm going to disagree. I like it in conference alignments, and here's why. Think of the NFL, which is the bell cow of sports right now. It's the best, the most observed, best sport out there. And the gap between the East and the West, I think, is shrinking, and it's cyclical. I think it's going to go back and forth. Here's why I like conference alignments. Who would you say, if you're going to name two quarterbacks that are in the league right now, who would you say is the best rivalry in the NFL?
Steelers, Ravens.
Okay, what about like between players, quarterbacks? Would you say Ben Roethlisberger and Joe Flacco, or would you think maybe if people say who are two quarterbacks that are rivals in the NFL today, you think another two quarterbacks might come to people's mind?
You got me. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know. I'm asking a question.
Maybe Rodgers and Cutler, potentially Rodgers and Stafford.
Okay.
But I think that the as far as conference divisional rivalry, I would say it's Patriots Steelers.
Well, yeah, I'm not. See, I think if you ask that question, if you just said to people, "Hey, what two quarterbacks in the NFL are the biggest rivals?" If you just ask that question, 100 people down.
You're going to say Tom and Peyton. I understand what you're saying.
I think that's what most people would say. And do you realize if not for conference alignment and you just took the best 12 teams, instead of meeting in the playoffs 6 or 7 times as they have, they would have met once. Okay? You build rivalries not by and in the NFL it's a little bit different. You can build rivalries in regular season games because each game is more important. In the NBA and in hockey, you play 82 games. In the NHL, you don't build rivalries in regular season games. How do you build rivalries? By having a series, by having a 7-game series that goes the distance, or a 7-game series that goes 6 games, or a series where you sweep the same team 2 years in a row. You do away with conference with that. And I think sports are built on the concept of I love this guy and I hate that guy. You're a Tom Brady guy. You love Tom Brady. You probably dislike Peyton Manning at least a little bit. Okay?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. If I'm a Steelers guy, I probably dislike the Ravens. Now, you can't build NBA rivalries by playing twice a year in the regular season. The Lakers and the Celtics play twice a year in the regular season. But how did they become rivals? By playing again and again in the finals. And the way you play again and again is by having conferences, by having it where you're going to shoehorn into these matchups the same teams. When you take away alignment, it's like the NCAA tournament. You very, very seldom get repeat matchups. And you're going to build rivalries in the NBA, and you build them in the NHL the same way. So the same argument for both sports. You build those by having matchups in the playoffs. And the de-alignment, if you will, of conferences in the NBA does away with that. And I think that you've got to keep conferences to keep those. Now, it could be possible you get the same couple teams meeting again and again, but you very much minimize the possibility of that statistically.
Now, see, I disagree with that. I think when you're trying to compare the NBA and the NHL in that, I think the salary cap is actually what keeps the parity in the NHL, because the salary cap of the NHL and the NBA are equivalent. Only difference is you got to sign 13 guys for one league and about 25 guys for the other league. Anyways, so I take that and I take the best 16 teams from the NHL. They're usually going to be a different set of teams for the most part every year. I take the NBA. I look at the top 11. We'll look at the top 5, maybe 6 Eastern Conference teams, and they're the same teams for probably the last 15 years, with the exception of maybe the Knicks in the mid-'90s. I mean, all we're doing basically is, and if you want to look at a downside of conference de-alignment, basically what we're doing is we're taking the small market teams and we're now even keep creating them a further gap in between them. Now you're looking at the teams like Cleveland. You're looking at the teams like Toronto. Toronto's going to have to stay good for a while, to remain up there. The Knicks, NBA can only hope that they get better. The Celtics, the NBA hopes they can only get better. But for the longest time, that 11th seed in the West has been above 500, and the 8th seed in the East has been 3-4 games under 500. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I understand that the NFL is a far different thing because there's a smaller sample size. There's 16 games. So a 7-9 team may on par be just as good, if not potentially better, than an 11-5 team, which we saw this year. But with the NBA, you have teams who are consistently in the West just because of the fact that they've located their team in a different region of the country. Who, let's take the Phoenix Suns. Let's take the Phoenix Suns and the Oklahoma City Thunder right now. And any given night, they're going to beat probably 6 through 15 in the East, no problem. So I think that you should award that team for being one of the 16 best teams.
Yeah, and I disagree. First of all,
so then take the Oklahoma City Thunder and move them to Charlotte.
If you look in the 1990s, the Eastern Conference was far better than the West. You had the Knicks were the 8th seed in the East when they went to the finals because the East was so deep, and then the West you had 2 or 3 teams, and that was it.
That was a strike season. That was a little bit different. That was a strike season.
No, that one season was a little different, but the year before they were the 7th seed and beat the Heat. I mean, you had that same you had depth in the East that you didn't. Cyclical, that's going to do away with it. But you still, again, if you're going to build the product is not built by saying, oh, this. And I would say, look, if you want to say it's not as if the Oklahoma City Thunder, if they don't make the playoffs, didn't have an opportunity. They had 82 games. And it's not as if they did. They might not have been good enough.
Sure, but if I'm the Oklahoma City Thunder, my games are against even my bottom feeders, like the Kings are no slouch. But I can go and play Charlotte, and I can go and play who's a playoff team, by the way. I can go and play. I think the best playoff team, the best of the worst, is the Milwaukee Bucks, and they don't even have their star player. I mean, you're looking at these teams. I mean, the 7th seed in the East, if I'm not mistaken, I think is the Charlotte Hornets, and they're 7 games under 500. I mean, that's ridiculous.
There's 16 that are above 500, and there's 9 in the West. The gap is not to make it out to be. It has gotten less. Last year it was a little bigger.
Okay, well, let's look at it this way. When you're comparing the NFL and the NBA, and you're talking about under 500 records. If I'm under 500 in a 16-game stretch at 7-9, which is virtually a couple bounces go my way. I'm 9-7. I'm 8-8, and 8-8 teams. We're not as up in arms as we are for 7-9 teams about being in the playoffs. Okay, so a 16-game stretch. If I'm pretty close to 500, I really don't have a problem. Over an 82-game stretch, if you're 4 or 5 games under 500 over 82 games, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't be in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, you could limit the number of teams in the playoffs, and
because the NBA is actually the only league that over long stretches of time, under 500 teams don't make it. Hockey, 82 games. If you're under 500,
that's not true. No.
With the
hockey teams.
Well, the problem
simple mathematics tells you. Look, you have 30 teams in the NBA. 16 make the playoffs. Please speak. On average, 15 are over 500, 15 are under. So on average, an average year, one team will have an under 500 record on average. So it's set up that way. The same thing's true in hockey. 30 teams, 15 are going to be over 500, 15 under, and 16 teams make the playoffs. So the same thing is in existence.
Well, I'm looking at the standings right now, and no NHL team is under 500. That's including overtime losses. The 8th seed in the East is the Boston Bruins, and they're 20. If you want to include overtime losses as losses, they're 28-50. They're 28-25. That's above 500. The 8th seed in the West is the Vancouver Canucks. They're 29-23. Now, obviously, you get points for losing in overtime, and I understand that, and that's beneficial to teams. But even with their losses, they're not under 5. And I think that's the key barometer over an 82 plus. You know what? If you go 81-81, you're not making the playoffs. That's 5.
And that's because 10 make it out of 30. You're just simply going to mathematics dictates that you will have teams.
Sure, I understand
above 500. I mean, that's the way it is. But again, I'm not opposed to reducing the number of teams to the playoffs. I'm okay with that. What I think is silly is to say, hey, look, we're going to benefit by we're going to benefit by taking away the potential of rivalries. So the odds that teams like, let's take Memphis and Oklahoma City, who have met 3 times in the last 4 years. Let's take Portland and Houston, who met last year in a great series that was decided by a shot at the buzzer.
That was a fun shot.
Right. I mean that shot alone was great, and all of that having been matchups, that's something you won. I think the NBA is benefited by that. To say that, oh yeah, they're not benefited by that. People don't. You can get the top 16 teams. Okay, so we get New Orleans. So we watch New Orleans destroyed by Golden State in the playoffs instead of Phoenix. Oh, that makes a difference. I mean, the first round of the NBA playoffs is largely inconsequential. I mean, nobody pays attention to it because
there's a reason you're
it
the
doesn't
number
matter.
1 seed, and there's a reason you're the number 8 seed. That's why and most times in the East, there's such a large gap. I mean, take Miami, was clearly the best team in the East and potentially the best team in the NBA for about 4 years. And they played, the one that comes to mind is from a financial betting standpoint was when they played the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round, who were 6 games swept. I don't even think they lost a game by less than like 13 points. So, I mean, you look at the West, you have the Golden State Warriors to beat the Dallas Mavericks. Anything can happen in the West. And you understand you're saying that's cyclical, but I think the 16 best teams, it shouldn't matter where they come from. Because look at the college football playoff. I don't think it matters where those teams come from, whether they're located in the Pacific Northwest, Southeast, Northeast. It doesn't matter where they come from. It's based on where they're ranked. And and that's not based on record, but the NBA is based on record. So if the NBA is going to be based on record, your record should mean something. It shouldn't matter where you're geographically located.
Okay. Hey, by the way, in the NHL, who is the 8th seed in the Western Conference, or the 4th seed in the Central Division, I guess you would say?
I think it's the Vancouver Canucks. I have to look at that again. I think they're in the Pacific. Pacific.
Yeah, they're the 4th seed in the Pacific. But look in the Central Division.
The Central Division is Winnipeg. Yes.
Yeah, and what's their record?
They are 27, 18, and 10.
So 27 wins, 28 losses.
Right.
What about the Kings, the team who's just 3 points out of it in the Pacific Division? What's their record?
They are 23, 18, and 12.
23 wins and 30 losses. So you have the teams who are just barely in the Western Conference. One of them is below 500, and the team who's almost there, just 3 points out of a position, is 7 games under 500. Now, I realize you can have a better record than someone. Like, for example, the Canucks have a better record than the Sharks, and yet they're below them because the Sharks have more overtime losses, which I think is crazy. If I were in hockey, I would hate that, because you could have a team who literally goes 0 wins, 0 and 82 overtime losses, which, I mean, right on the cusp of making the playoffs. I think that's crazy. I think, but again,
the difference is because NHL awards you for getting to overtime. Now, do I think that that's maybe a major flaw in the NHL system? Potentially, but I think that you're also playing. But a lot of times when you're down by 1 goal in the third period, there's maybe no incentive to get back, get into an overtime, because you know what, getting into an overtime, you still have to win the game if you want to be awarded points. But a lot of times when teams are just at their edge, they're just mentally and physically drained from a long road trip. Sometimes they have that last-ditch effort just to get into overtime to steal a point in their last game of a road trip, or their last game before they go on a road trip, or maybe in a homestand. You're just physically beat, or the All-Star break's coming up. Just sometimes getting into overtime, and that's a product of the NHL system. They award points for just getting into overtime. It used to be a tie, but now it's being awarded. Now each team is getting awarded something, versus when we played a lot of 2-2 ties, which the NHL fans actually got a little bit restless about that, and which I think is what created the overtime loss category.
Right. Well, and let me say this too, and I know we got to wrap this up here in a second, but one of the things, and there's the reason why you're going to have fewer teams with potentially being under 500 in the NHL than the NBA is the NHL rigs the schedule. You play 12, I think, out of conference games. Maybe it's 18. It's either 12 or 18. And in the NBA, you play 30 out of conference games. So 38% of your schedule is out of conference. Well, that allows you to have better records in one conference. If you want to make sure you don't have under 500 teams in the playoffs, do what the baseball used to do, where the National League and American League never played each other. And then, of course, you're not going to have teams under 500 because you're only playing each other. And you can't have 10 teams at 500 in one conference and 8 in the other. So anyway, that's avoidable. If that's your goal, that's easy to accomplish.
Well, sure. I mean,
But
and the thing is, the situation is that the regular season, why you have much more of a schedule that's dominant in your own conference, is because you're attempting to create rivalries that you will meet them more games, 3, 4. Because you meet, correct me if I'm wrong, the NBA, you meet each team in your conference 4 times.
well, you meet it's every team in your division 4 times, every team out of conference twice, and then the other 10 teams you face 6 of them 3 times and 4 of them 4 times. It's whacked out the way they do that. I know we got to go. And Aaron, tell us a little bit about Aristocrat Sportsnet.
Yeah, it's a great new internet radio station that we're happy to be a part of. I know the Sport Buffet has been looking for a new home. We've been on podcasts for a while, and I thought it was a great opportunity. A friend of mine that I went to school with is starting it up, so it's definitely a real grassroots effort. And if you're listening to this, or if you happen to catch thesportbuffet.com, or if you happen to just be in a search engine, just Aristocrat Sportsnet, Sport Buffet, we're glad to be a part of this. And also on the site, there are comment boxes underneath all of the streams. So we're definitely interested in your takes, what you have to say, whether you like us, you hate us, you want to see our faces, you want to see less of us. I'm okay with whatever you want to comment. And I definitely am intrigued to get this bad boy off the ground. And I'm also interested in becoming, partners with them. And we're really excited to be a part of Aristocrat Sportsnet. And I'm hoping that they're just as excited for us to be affiliated with them.
I love how you said if you want to see our faces or see less of us. I'm not sure how much less you can get than our faces.
Well, exactly. Maybe
just
the
our
fans,
hair.
Maybe the fans like it this way. And if I take the maybe
they want to see just our hair,
the clip art. Maybe they just want to see shadow puppets.
But a fingernail. We'll show them fingernails. Well, So anyway.
But also, I wanted to interject. Also, we're going to have a lot more content, a lot more longer shows. We're going to be doing more shows here on the Aristocrat Sportsnet. I know you're excited about that, and I'm looking forward to it. And also, since working with the new handicap service out here in Las Vegas, we're going to be talking a little more sports betting on our show. So I'm excited about that.
Yes, anything to talk betting, because I'd bet that I'd lose. So
well, I can help you.
Right. You can help me lose. I know you can. You're very good at that. All right. Well, that's we've kind of struck it all out now, but I know we're up against the time. So this has been the Sport Buffet, our premiere episode on Aristocrat Sportsnet. See ya.
Later.